to the All right, so hello, welcome back. It is Wednesday, June 23rd, and this is our lunch study break. Let me just spotlight myself for everyone here. So I would say today was an interesting morning. I don't know if it's the first time it's ever happened, but I clearly woke up in the same mindset as Gary Sokol. Gary Sokol and I had the same thought this morning, and we're studying the same Torah. I was very interested in doing a Pride Torah session here today. Obviously, it's Pride weekend coming up. We have, we're in the middle of Pride month, and I came across a lovely piece of Pride Torah this morning, which comes from Kilat Hadar, which I'm going to share in a little bit. I think we haven't had the opportunity. I've always wanted to do something big for Pride here in San Francisco. But last year, we were planning to do a Pride Shabbat with Julia Eisenberg, who's very well known for her queer Torah and her queer PU team. But of course, COVID happened, and then unfortunately, Julia passed away. And of course, we're still sort of in the midst of the pandemic. But I wanted to take the opportunity to, first of all, I was thinking we've been doing too many male writers recently, which is default. I mean, it's like, so help me get out of that default here a little bit. I went to the seminary, so, I have that sort of predisposition. So what I found today comes from a wonderful professor named Avital Hochstein. So let me open up and tell you a little bit about who she is and the Torah that she shared today, which is really, my other concern about the Torah that I'm going to share with you today is it violates one of my central principles, which is don't preach to the choir. So my biggest concern with this piece of Torah, it's beautiful and I love it, but I do worry it's preaching to the choir a little bit. So please, if you can disagree with it, I encourage you to do so. But it's a lovely piece of Torah that's totally fit for the times. So here's Avital Hochstein. She's a rabbi. She's the president of Hadar in Israel. She's the former Rosh Kollel at the Pardes Institute. She's a research fellow at Machon Sholom Hartman. She's taught Talmud for several years, and she is the co-author of The Place of Women in Midrash. And she shared this piece of Torah today. And just so you know, in terms of what's going on this weekend, so it is Pride weekend here. And if you're around on Friday, so we are having two events that are taking place simultaneously. This one's not our event, but it's happening at the same place as our event. So at the same time. So there'll be people in Mountain Lake Park celebrating Pride. Rabbi Russell will be there. I'll be there. Children will be there. Our event, I can show you, is here. That's not it. This would be our event, but it's in the same place. So everyone's sort of gathering together to celebrate in the picnic. Come join us. People from the JCC will be there as well. And we're going to be celebrating and singing. So please feel free to come and join us. This is this coming Friday. All right. Now let's take a little look here. This is her Pride Torah. Interesting. What makes it Pride Torah? I don't know. I mean, I think that's a question I have. What makes this distinctly Pride Torah? I'm interested in the history. Maybe I'm glad that we have some old timers from Beth Sholom here. Perhaps you can share a little bit of the history here at Beth Sholom. I know Beth Sholom was the first conservative synagogue with a gay president of the shul. So it's an area that we have always been supportive of. Okay, so let's hear, but her Torah is just magnificently gorgeous. So she begins with this idea of Moshe's mask and our own. Okay, so she's going to begin her Pride Torah talking about this idea of Moses's face shining. And what is the impact that Moses's special revelation, special status, facial appearances, which is distinct from other people. What's the impact that that is going to have on the rest of the community? And what is the impact that that is going to have on Moshe Rabbeinu himself? So here's where she begins. Imagine the tension and emotion that Bnei Yisrael felt as they stood at the foot of Mount Sinai. I want to direct our attention to this emotion the second time it arises. Moshe has already ascended once before, so she's talking now about the second time that Moses goes to get the second set of tablets. Moses has already ascended once before. He has already been present high up on the mountain, wrapped in thunder, lightning, and cloud. And the encounter at his descent was a failure, the calf and its aftermath. The tablets were shattered by Moshe. The process of transmitting the Torah may not have been completed. I suppose that Moshe and Bnei Yisrael feel at this stage that the covenant has not entirely been executed. And now it's round two. The tension and emotion are at their peak. Will the encounter succeed the second time around? So Moshe arrives, is seen, advances, I imagine, step by step from the fire, the thunder, and the cloud, gripping the tablets, the covenant, and he is seen as terrifying, right? They're terrified of God. They like, go Moshe, you go. Like this, like throwing Moshe, that you deal with God. We're too scared. We need you. And now Moshe comes back and he's similarly terrifying to them. This is how the verses describe Moshe's appearance and Bnei Yisrael's reaction. All right, it says, Vayihi beredet Moshe mehar Sinai ushnei luchot ha'edut beyad Moshe. Okay, and it was that when Moshe came down from Mount Sinai and the two tablets of the testimony were in Moshe's hands, when he came down from the mount, that Moshe knew not that the skin of his face shone while God talked to him. All right. And Aaron and all of the children of Israel saw Moshe, and behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come near him. So we have this image. Moshe is coming down. He doesn't know his face is on fire, but everybody else does. So Rabbi Hochstein writes, they see and they are afraid. All of Bnei Israel, even Moshe's brother Aharon sees, even his brother is scared of him. Even his brother, his older brother. The changed skin of Moshe's face arouses fear, fear that leads to alienation. There was probably no more, well, I was about to say there's probably no more lonely character in our Torah than Moshe, and then I thought of Abraham. But maybe Abraham included because he had Sarah. Moshe's distinctive, different appearance is tied to the people's fear that leads them to distance themselves from him. Okay, so Rabbi Hochstein says that he looks different. He just looks differently from the rest of us in a way that's terrifying to us, that we don't know how to deal with. We don't have the psychology, the wherewithal to be able to deal with how different this man is from the rest of us. Difference, fear, distance, and they were afraid to come near. Moshe's distinctive appearance is described in the verse with a word that has two very different meanings. We could translate it, and behold, the skin of his face shone with a bright glow like sunlight, or Rabbi Hochstein says it can be translated as, behold, the skin of his face was horned with actual horns like those of an animal. Thus, the verse leaves us puzzled. All right, so let's just pause here for a second. First of all, what makes this Pride Torah? Let's just start there. I mean, so this is the lead. She writes on top, this is Pride Torah. So far, this doesn't seem like Pride Torah to me. Maybe it does to you. You guys, I'm only 3 years here in San Francisco. Gary.
I have a bigger question for
I've
you.
been baiting you the whole time. Yeah.
What makes it not Pride Torah for you?
Good. Yeah, of course. Well, what is Pride Torah? I guess it's my ultimate.
No, you can't answer my question with a question. You have to answer mine.
I think Pride. Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's the conversation I want to have today. What is Pride Torah? How do we value differences? How do we value the? We say Shivim Panim LaTorah. There are many different perspectives on the Torah. Everyone is created B'Tselem Elohim. And I would understand Pride Torah as Torah that lifts people up for the uniqueness of who they are as individuals. That's
Okay,
that would be my
so
definition.
you just answered your question. That's what.
I guess so, but it's no fun. But it's no fun if I answer the question. I mean, that takes away the fun from it. Ellen, do you want to say something? No, she doesn't. Okay, so let's go on here. All right, so that's right. So we want to validate everyone's uniqueness. Everyone is created b'tselem Elohim, but Gary, sometimes that image that some people are uniquely created in is terrifying to a lot of people and terrifying to other people. And that's Moses. He's created very uniquely. We know this. He's been through the most unique circumstance that we have ever recorded. And at the moment, that has led to a physical, it's skin now, physical manifestation that people can't countenance. They just can't. It's hard for them, even his brother. All right, so let's go on. Let's see where she takes the Torah here. And he masked his face. Now, whether his face is beamed with rays like suns, or whether these are animal horns, Moshe must find some way to grapple with the fear and alienation that accompany them. And he has a logical solution. He put a mask upon his face. He places upon his face a covering, as the commentators explain. All right, so he puts a mask on himself. By the way, I had a little thing I should have showed you a second ago here when I was thinking of what image could we have in our head if we're talking about horns that might scare people off from horns. So what I wanted to share with everyone here is, here you go. That's perhaps what it might look like. All right, there you go. There are horns coming out of someone. So if you wanted to get a visual image of that, there you go. All right, so let's now go back to our text. So put a mask on your face. All right, so Moshe, so the word isn't repulsive. This is not like the elephant man here, although I think that's a worthwhile topic to discuss, but that's not what this is here. This is, there's something metaphysical, something not human or not within the perspective. So what does he do? He puts a mask on his face. So the commentators explain, to Moshe it is clear that the responsibility for grappling with the fear of Aharon, his brother, and that of all Bnei Yisrael is his to bear. Israel are the ones who are sacred. Aharon is, Israel, thank you. Israel are the ones who are scared. Aharon is afraid, but Moshe is the one who needs to hide himself, to go in the closet to cover his face. It is heartbreaking to think that to be with people, Moshe needs to wear a mask to hide aspects of himself, all because of their weakness. And I thought of another example that I promise you guys haven't thought of in a while, but here's another example of someone who perhaps shone too brightly. There you go. There is another individual who perhaps shone too brightly that he felt he needed to walk around with a mask covering his face. That is way before COVID, by the way. All right, so that, and now we can just hold on to Michael Jackson as an example as we get into the commentaries and as we get into the rabbinic commentaries here. All right. He would remove the mask. He would replace the mask. So the verse's description of the way Moshe uses the mask is confusing. It is hard to understand when Moshe places the mask over his face and when he emerges and removes it. So here's the text. And when Moshe was done speaking with them, he put a mask on his face. So I guess, we should be able to picture this rather easily after the past year we've been through. He talks. I've done funerals in the last few months where I've spoken and then put the mask back on. And that has been sort of how it goes. I see there's a comment here, not because he shone so brightly, because he had nose left over. Oh, well, that's true. That Michael Jackson point is he was afraid to show his face in public because he felt bad about it. All right, yeah, he's embarrassed about something. That's a good point, Jude. I think we're going to come to that. So Moses here it says, when he was done speaking with them, he put on his mask. So he gives a speech, puts on his mask. But when Moses went in before God, that God might speak with him, he took the mask off until he came out. And he came out and he spoke to the children of Israel that which was commanded. And the children of Israel saw the face of Moshe, that the skin of Moshe's face sent forth beams or horns. And Moshe put the mask back on his face until he went in to speak with God. So Rabbi Hochstein says, when Moshe stands before Bnei Israel, does he stand with the mask on? It's unclear from the text. Maybe you were confused as I read this in verse 34. Is he standing before the people with the mask on or without it? Because it says two different things in verse 34. Here it says, but when Moses went in before God, he took his mask off. But then it says the children saw his face. So if he's speaking to God to take the mask off, how do the people see his face? So the Kli Yakar, in an effort to grapple with this ambiguity, transforms the mask into a characteristic trait of Moshe. And here's where Michael Jackson, Judah, I think, comes in. This is the Kli Yakar. He says, and he put a mask over his face because everyone was looking at him. And Moshe was particularly humble and bashful. And he was embarrassed that they were looking at the beaming of his face's skin. For that is how any bashful person would feel. So he put a mask over his face. Now, Rabbi Hochstein says what arises from this is a fascinating insight into the human psyche. When people send me the message, whether directly or indirectly, Rabbi Hochstein says that something about me is frightening, it can cause me to hide something about myself. I am liable to cover up, to find myself embarrassed, burdened with shame. That is the distinctive beaming of Moshe's skin leads. That is, the distinctive beaming of Moshe's skin leads to fear, which leads to concealment, right? I can't help but think about the fear in society now, fear of COVID, fear of infection. It's very fear. You turn on the news, it's all fearful. And concealment by its very nature constitutes and preserves alienation from the world around me or even from myself. And unfortunately, because of safety reasons, we've had to conceal ourselves. And that has led to alienation, I think. And as we are trying here as a community to come back together, and we've tried throughout the pandemic with technology to make sure that no one felt that alienation. But that alienation is real when someone feels that they have something about themselves that other people might consider to be terrifying. Right now, the Netziv from Voluchin, he gives a different solution. He says, for at a time when he spoke with God, he removes the mask entirely. And before going out, he puts the mask on his head, but he folds it upwards so that while he talked, I guess people who have masks wearing poorly, so that while he told them the laws, they would see his face. And the moment he finished speaking, he lowered the mask that was on his head over his face. So Rabbi Hochstein says, facing God in the moment of dialogue on a divine mission, in the moment of partnership, there is the ability to reveal, to be revealed, to include why and what does it mean that facing God, one can stand unmasked. Okay, so what is it about God that we can be fully unmasked before God? Moshe does not need to hide parts of himself when he faces the Creator, because the very fact of his uniqueness and distinctiveness is itself an implication of his being created in God's image. I wonder whether sometimes in the nature of relational systems, we confuse equality and identity, or whether we are not always careful enough about the implications of equality. Equality does not mean similarity. The fact that all people are equal does not derive from our sameness to each other, quite the opposite. God's image in the world is magnified and augmented by the variation among us. So let me just stop here. Any comment on the Kli Yakar or the Netziv, or sort of this image of God having to hide, Moses having to hide himself because he's either embarrassed Or I don't know. What does any thoughts here? Anybody want to contribute? Anybody ever fear? Ellen, yeah, you go.
I totally resonate with this. I think about people who are gay who feel that they have to hide because of the way other people react to it. And I think that's something that we struggle with, that we need to have a message in our head that everybody is in the image of God, and we truly may be uncomfortable around some people, whether it's their mannerisms or disfigurement or anything, but that's for us to grapple with, that we need to get comfortable with.
We don't take the deformed person and ask her to cover up, is your point. Yeah, but yeah, keep going.
Well, the other thing I want to mention is I'm an addict for this color by number program, because I am the pits at art and picking colors, although I don't always like theirs. But I've noticed that recently, most of the people are colored in a way that they are people of color. And I find myself reacting like, okay, that's enough of this. Can't we get back to? And I realize this is a great experience for you to be going through, because this is exactly what people of color deal with all the time.
They just Disney just cast a non-white lead for Snow White in a live action feature of Snow White. And I think that's just exactly right. And it's going to force people in the right ways. Judah.
Yeah, I love this teaching, and I don't see Moses covering his face out of shame. I see him covering his face out of compassion.
Yeah, talked about that. Yeah.
The flock he tends. But, I'm really sorry you brought Michael Jackson into this. I'm not a fan.
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, no, I wasn't even thinking about that other stuff.
Right. The fact that it wasn't, he's not a good role model. And the whole thing with his nose was vanity, and not an unknown term to us gay people, to be vain. But I don't even consider him gay. I consider him to be a pedophile. But him wearing a mask was because of the damage he had done to himself. And so
not applicable. Bad analogy. Well, sometimes I'll throw out analogies, Judah, that won't click. And I think it's safe to say that one's not a clicker. So I appreciate the correction. That's good. Now tell me about Moshe now. What's Moshe feeling?
Well, I think I told you, Moshe is feeling compassion for the people who are scared about him. He's not ashamed of his face glowing, as opposed to gays who are ashamed, who feel shame because of how society interprets them, or how the church or temple has told them that they're unworthy. But that's not what Moses is feeling. Moses just came from Hashem. He's not feeling unworthy or shameful at all, but he sees the people are freaked out and he wants to protect them. And that's totally opposite of why gay people are closet in my book.
No, beautiful. And so that's very different from the Kli Yakar's take on it. Sandra, I saw you just pulled out your Chumash. We're in Shemot, verses 33 through 35, if you want to look. We're in Shemot, chapter 34, verses 33 through 35, because I saw you just took out your Chumash. Gary and then Ben. You're muted. You're still muted.
There are two different readings on this, and you took the obvious and easy one, that don't be afraid of the other. I'm going to sound like your mother here, but you're probably too young to remember this play. But in 1988, I think it was, Craig Lucas did a play called Prelude to a Kiss. Have you ever heard of it? Oh, in Prelude to a Kiss, a young couple get married. And the girl is young and confused and naive. And at the wedding, an old, it's an elderly Jewish man, he plays it at, comes up to the bride and says, I want to give you a kiss for your blessing, which is something very Jewish. The bride and groom blesses them. And they kiss. And what we learn over the course of the play is that their souls are exchanged. And the young, beautiful woman is now an old man who is an old man dying of cancer and afraid of death. And the young girl wanted to switch with him because she's like scared of life and living, and she takes on them. And the couple go on their honeymoon, and he's with this young girl who acts like an old man. And the young girl realizes she's trapped in the body of the old man and follows him and tries to convince her husband that she's really him. And the whole thing is, what do we love, the surface or the image or the mask that we wear, or is it the soul of the person we're involved with?
Beautiful.
This was taken as a metaphor for AIDS, and do we love the beauty or do we love the person, and are we there for them? But it works here with pride and being gay. Do we love the person for where they are inside, or what they are on the surface? And I think that's a lot about what these masks are in here.
Yeah. So stay with me on this for a second. Are people afraid of what Moshe has on the surface or what Moshe has on the inside?
I think a little of both.
Yeah, because I totally agree with you here, but the elephant man analogy that came up earlier sort of stuck with me. It's like, are people afraid of Moshe because he's physically got these horns, or he's shooting? I guess, yeah, the dude comes down from a mountain, he's shooting lights from his head. I'm going to be scared, right?
But that also makes it hard to see the inner message and that he has, and that's why the people resist, because it's easy to reject the other, and it's hard to find the depth that's beneath that.
And Judah is saying here, well, he's covering those rays so that people can hear the message, and he knows that they can't hear the message if he has those rays. So it's totally compassionate to people. That's beautiful. Ben.
Yeah, I'm gonna, swerve a little bit.
Good,
I was listening.
good, please do. I told you this was going to be preaching to the choir a little bit. So I warned it from the outset.
Well, I mean, this is a bit of a different take, maybe. But I was listening early this week. I heard an interview with Sarah Schulman. She's just written a book about ACT UP, and how it started and what it did. And, she was talking about the ways in which, the gay community becoming more visible was very important. And not only visible, but really in people's faces. ACT UP was sort of a small group, but their approach to direct action was that when you didn't get what you needed from the powers that be, you disrupted, right? You marched into churches, right, and disrupted services, right? You disrupted business meetings and political meetings. And so it was sort of a hyper visibility, right? And they were very, very effective. But I think what we haven't addressed is who we're talking about. Moses is the leader of these people, right? He's in a position of power. He is the most powerful person in this group, right? And when you talk about the visibility of powerful people, it's different than when you're talking about the visibility of marginalized people.
Can I throw one wrinkle into that? I have to close my door here. One wrinkle I want to interrupt you with, Ben. Moses doesn't want the gig. Does that matter?
No, I don't think so. The point, I guess what I'm trying to say is that he's already about as visible as you can be in that community, right? So to put a mask on is, it's hiding a part of himself, and it's, of course, it's an imposition and doesn't let him shine the way that he wants to, but it's not like nobody's going to see him or know who he is, right? So I think if we equate that with the way that, gay people have remained in the closet or something like that, there's a little bit of a mismatch there, because there we're talking about people who are invisible, that their identity is really invisible, right? Gay people in the closet, their major part of their identity is invisible, right? You don't really have that with Moshe. In fact, the mask is a signifier of this thing that's happened to him, right? It's not like it's hiding it, it's covering it, but it's not, everybody knows why he's wearing a mask. He's wearing a mask because his face is shining and it's a little scary.
But don't you still want to cry for Moshe?
Yeah, sure, it's a hat, but yes, but
Don
you see what I'm saying?
Don doesn't want to cry for Moshe. Okay, good. I want to hear why Don doesn't want to cry in a bit. Ben, go on. Wait, Ben, continue.
No, I guess the only thing I want to point out is that the analogy works up to a point, right? But it's not only the masking, you know, if you're talking about the gay community or other marginalized communities, right? It's not just a covering up, right? It's an erasure, really, right? The hiding of one's identity is an erasure of oneself in a significant way. It's not just it's not the same as even covering up a deformity, right? I think it's different in quality.
Yeah. Don?
Yeah, well, you said about crying for Moshe. He just saw God.
I
mean,
I love it.
I'm not going to
Oh
cry.
God, whatever comes next is gravy.
Exactly. So, but and I was thinking who I would cry for, and don't take this the wrong way, but I would cry for those that see gay people with horns, using that a gay person, any person it has the light of Moshe, and the people who only see the horns, oh God, I don't know, or what I'm practicing is having the greatest of compassion. I mean, not letting them do what they do, you know, I'm not saying that, but that's where the compassion is. And I think that Moshe saw that and had the compassion, like was being said here. And so he covered up his face, but still shone within for those that could see. So he would not just leave. There was always the opportunity to see the light. And I think with this whole issue of you know, the gay issue or any issue, any hatred, you know, that's going on in this world, that those that are being prejudiced against need to have more compassion. Not, you understand, not being prejudiced against. I'm not saying that, but we have to have the compassion, because those who see horns, I'm convinced the only way those horns are coming off is from them. Okay, from something inside when they can see the light. I don't think the laws or that kind of stuff, although they're needed temporarily, they're never going to change a person's heart. I don't care how many laws you change. You can change the laws and we need to do that. You need to do that to survive. But until we take those who are full of hate and somehow they can see the light. So we're all like, I'll say, we should all be more like Moshe with our own light at whatever level we have it, and be appropriate with it, but always keep it shining so that hatred leaves. When hatred leaves, prejudice leaves, but it's the hatred in the heart. So
Yeah, but if we show our lights, we blow everyone away and they go run away in fear and we never make any headway.
you put on just enough of the mask so that the light comes out appropriate, so that it can move their heart.
So I have to edit who I am constantly in front of everybody in this world because I'm worried that I'm going to be too flamboyant.
Yes. Well, to be appropriate, it's for your well-being. It's to be very appropriate to the situation. If you're with your children, there's certain things, or I don't know, you don't do in front of your children because it's inappropriate if your children see that.
No, so there's a certain level.
Out of
Yeah.
love, out of love.
No, there's a certain level of knowing your audience. Maybe I wouldn't use the word appropriate. I'd use the word knowing your audience. Yeah,
Beautiful.
Judah and I don't like the word appropriate, so I'm going to change that to knowing your audience. Just lifnei mi ata omed. Know before who you stand, and judge appropriately. I mean, I think we do that in all aspects of life. Marv.
Well, of course, Moses is in a unique position. He's the leader of the community. He's God's favorite. He's got political capital to burn. He can present himself in this strange fashion to the community, and he could do something else. He could make this a teachable moment. He can express to the community whatever lesson he wants to give them. And if it's teaching people that because you look different from someone else, their true character still has to be appreciated, he has political capital to spend, so he should do that.
Good. Okay, good. I'm so happy you're connecting two things that I want to talk about here. One is this idea that famous people are different. And then the other is the idea that famous people have an obligation. So what I'm hearing a little bit here is that if you are a well-known person, you might have an obligation to come out of the closet. That is a moral obligation. I want to give you an example that was from yesterday.
Well, I'm going to give you an example.
Yeah, you do it. Do it. You go first.
Chuck Schumer is the Senate head. He has an opportunity to speak up for the Jewish people. Where some people would say in this country, there are concerns that the Jewish people are under assault. He has political capital to spend. I don't hear Schumer saying anything.
So he's in the closet. You're saying he's in the closet about his Jewish identity. And he, by virtue of being a leader, has a moral responsibility to speak. Okay, so we could debate that, but I want to show you this. It's from yesterday. It's so lovely in its simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody's seen this already.
Yeah.
Let me see. Hold on. I have to share it so you can hear. 1 second. It's so simple.
What's up, people? I'm Carl Nassib. I'm at my house here in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Just want to take a quick moment to say that I'm gay. I've been meaning to do this for a while now, but I finally feel comfortable enough to get it off my chest. I really have the best life. I got the best family, friends, and job a guy could ask for. I'm a pretty private person, so I hope you guys know that I'm really not doing this for attention. I just think that representation and visibility are so important. I actually hope that one day videos like this and the whole coming out process are just not necessary. But until then, I'm going to do my best and do my part to cultivate a culture that's accepting, that's compassionate. And I'm going to start by donating $100,000 to the Trevor Project. They're an incredible organization. They're the #1 suicide prevention service for LGBTQ youth in America. And they're truly doing incredible things. And I'm very excited to be a part of it, to help in any way that I can. And I'm really pumped to see what the future holds. That's all I have for you guys. I hope you have a great day. Work hard.
All right, that's it. That's it. Pretty simple. In case you're wondering who Carl is, he is a defensive end for your Oakland Raiders. I know they moved to. That's for the Trevor Project. If you're interested in making a donation, you can give to the Trevor Project here. He links right to it, and he is a defensive end for the Raiders, and he is the first openly gay football player who is rostered. Michael Sam, if you remember, several years back was drafted. But yeah, it's just he's defensive end. I'm gay. I'm giving money. Moving on. What I love about that is it's not done with bells and whistles, and I don't know why I like that. Maybe that's my own stuff.
You'll be happy to hear that the first day everything was positive, and then
no, what happened now? This world of ours, jeepers.
Actually, you will like this, I think, almost, because it's the exact thing you hate. Is that people came around, somehow they found out he registered as a Republican. So,
I mean, you can't be gay and a Republican? Is that's verboten?
well, it's as you started, you said you wish you weren't preaching to the converted on this parsha. I almost think that I wouldn't want to be part of a kahal where people could take another side to this. So a lot of people, so he has had, after it was amazing there, if you look on my Facebook feed, 100 people posted that video.
Beautiful.
So finally yet today, and all of a sudden I saw 2 people say, but he registered as a Republican. It did have a debate though. Some people said, just because he registered as a Republican, we don't know who he voted for, and one is not the other.
That's true.
So it was actually a relatively balanced discussion, but someone did have to bring that up.
But let me ask you or whomever, like, does he have a responsibility? Like, is the fact that, people know who he is? I mean, if Tom Brady were gay, would he have a responsibility? What do you think about that? That idea that if you're in the public light, like Moshe, because we've sort of gone through here, this idea that Moshe is a special person in this story. He certainly is. And therefore he has greater responsibility to lead, as Marv said. So do famous gay people have the similar obligation? Is that an appropriate moral obligation to put on anyone? Judah.
Yeah, so I guess I'm being real judgmental, but I've never liked Debbie Friedman since I found out, she died in the closet, married to a woman, and she could have been such a great role model to the Jewish community. She's held in such respect, and she kept this, I don't go with the privacy thing that if you're in the public spotlight, I don't, same with Queen Latifah, you don't get to claim privacy if you want to be in the public spotlight. That said, I don't feel people have an obligation necessarily, but when you're in an important position like that, when you're influencing people, when you can do I guess it's when you can do something for the good and you don't.
So maybe it's a mitzvah. So maybe we could frame it as it's a mitzvah for someone who has an aspect of themselves that's outside of the norm. It's a mitzvah to share it. It's not a mitzvah to keep it covered. Can we say that?
I'm gonna take a counterpoint.
Yeah, Ben and then Sandra.
Look, I don't know where and what we speak because thankfully I'm not a famous person and I don't know what that's like. But I think for people in that position, I can understand that they've got to keep something for themselves. I think if you are constantly on display, I imagine it's hard to feel like you're just giving yourself, every part of yourself away all the time.
Yeah, you don't want your fans in your bedroom.
And you have to, right? I don't think we certainly don't expect heterosexual celebrities to share with us details of their love life.
Yes,
right?
we do. We do.
Well, maybe we do, but many choose not to, right? Many choose not to. Many choose to keep a part of their life for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I do take the point that you can do good, right? By making that visible. I guess what I'm saying is, it would be nice, right? But I think I don't know if it's fair to judge people harshly.
Well, I like Judah. I like Judah's comment here, so I'm going to interrupt you.
But hold on. I will say I do think there's a
more
difference.
Than just sex.
There's a difference between that and being closeted, right? I think being closeted is misleading people, right? In a way, being closeted is not just not being public, right? It's actually misleading. It's actually misrepresenting yourself. Right. So I do think I am against that. I think in general, you should not misrepresent who you are. Right. Or tell people a story about yourself, which just isn't true. Right. And
Well,
maybe there's a
haven't you-
difference.
Haven't you just argued against your whole case you started with then?
He does that. No,
No.
he does that in every class. He does that in every class. Okay.
Well,
Because
you know, consistency is the hobgobbling of little
I
minds.
think you
but-
I think you have the right to not disclose any of that when you're an average person, but when you make your living off of being a role model and off of putting yourself out there, I mean, if fame is where you decide to make your living being in the public, then you've put yourself out in the public and you're open to scrutiny. If
What do you
you're the
think about
average
Judas'
person-
point, Gary? Can you speak to Judas' point where it's about more than sex? It's about more than just what's going on in the bedroom?
But that's my point. When you're someone who has decided to make yourself in the public eye and be a public figure and look to the public for acknowledgement, you have to give of your whole self to that. You don't get to say, yes, I give of myself in this sphere and then I can close off all the rest. You've done that. There are plenty of other opportunities.
From a defensive end for the Raiders. I mean, do you think he gives the defensive end for the Raiders? Does he give that up? I don't know. I don't know if he gives that up.
I bet you he's on Twitter. He's tweeting things. He's going to do endorsements for things for shoes. He's going to do endorsements for all these things. If you make your life selling who you are and you sell an inauthentic self, that's not right. I mean, if you're not making your life that way, you have the right to choose what you disclose if you're a
okay. So there is. It makes me. First of all, I adore that we can have this. I adore that we've created this space where we can have this conversation because I'd probably be afraid to have it in other settings. So thank you. It's a holy conversation. And Sandra's next to comment here. But yeah, let me just go to Sandra because she's been waiting for a while. Thank you for this.
I was late tuning into you because I was attending a seminar on unconscious bias.
Ooh.
And the presenter was a Black therapist, and he gave strategies for facing microaggressions. And one of them was in the therapy room. And he has a model, it's called the Let Up model. And one of the features is for the T in Let, tell your story. So I was thinking in a situation, we're talking about public announcements versus privacy. If Chuck Schumer, if it should come up, like if he faces anti-Semitism or something, I think it's perfectly appropriate for him to tell his story and to talk about it, how he's affected by it and his community. And it's self-disclosure. And in a famous person too. I don't know, maybe a football player faces that on the field where, you know, he's supposed to be macho or aggressive.
Oh, well, of course, that's what it's about. Of course. I mean, that's what just look at Rock Hudson. Look at Rock Hudson. That's what it was all about.
Appropriate for him in that context to tell his story and announce he's gay. And that would do a lot of good.
Well, hopefully it will. What I want to do is I want to finish the Devar Torah, and then Judah is next in line to comment here. So let me just go back to the text here. Because there's a little bit more that we haven't read. Hold on. All right, well, that was good. I forgot where we almost left off. Okay. He would remove the mask. He would replace the mask. We talked about that. We did the Kliya car. Okay. We did this. All right. Here we go. And when we overcome our impulse to fear differences between us, to fear one whose face shines with a different light, when we overcome the impulse to hide our unique faces and lights, then we take a small step toward an opportunity to emulate God, to walk more fully in God's ways. So Rabbi Hochstein, is a beautiful way of expressing what I think so many of us are getting at here. When we speak in these terms, we are partners in building a community with room for all to flower as images of divinity. Amen. A community where none of us needs to wear veils or masks. Hi. When we overcome the fear that comes from seeing horns or rays of light, and beneath it, we see who is standing before us every Moshe, whoever they are, then we merit to be a segment of those who see. And B'nai Yisrael saw Moshe's face, that the skin of Moses' face shone with light. So let's maybe go through part 4 here, and then we'll come back and finish our discussion. For they feared to come near to they returned to him. It's worth paying attention to one more point, she says. What makes it possible for Moshe to remove his mask is speech. And Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned unto him, and Moses spoke to them. And afterward, all the children of Israel came near, and he gave them in commandment all that God had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. And when Moshe was done speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. It is true that revelation sometimes makes connection hard. After all, when Moses' face shone, human beings did not dare to approach him. But it is clear that veiling and hiding and make encounter harder too. What ultimately makes it possible for Moshe to meet B'nai Yisrael unveiled is speech. And speech, which is what we're trying to establish here and what we've been doing every Wednesday, that can be dialogue, voice, content, and opportunity for encounter. An encounter that has two sides. You've heard me talk about Buba forever. Thus, instead of difference, fear, and alienation, we can see a new process unfold: difference, speech, diversity, and community. Amen. Judah.
I just wanted to say, Dan, maybe you've been in San Francisco too long. If your first thought of the day is same as Gary Sokol and me and you are on the same page.
Nothing wrong with that. I like to take the best from every environment I'm in.
I just want to say that, as growing up in the 50s, the only gay role models there were was Liberace and Paul Lynde, and if Rock Hudson had been out of the closet, I wouldn't have had to deal with all my internalized homophobia all my life if there was another role model between those two, besides those two. I also just want to share a claim to fame, one of my claims to fame, and that is I was actually at the Stonewall riots, which is like the beginning of gay liberation. Wow. And when I was in San Francisco, we had a Keshet group at Beth Sholom, I think, and we would have monthly dinners. Maybe 10 to 20 people would show up with a guest or whatever. And the only thing I remember about Pride Shabbat is that we would each take part in the service.
Yeah, thank you. You want to tell us about Stonewall? I mean, you just sort of threw that out there.
Well, I was thinking this morning, I should say, I have to be clear with my words. I was at Stonewall. I was at the Stonewall riots. I wasn't in the Stonewall riots. I can't take credit for, being part of that revolution until maybe the next year. But I was just cruising the village. And my friend had a Volkswagen bus, the kind that had an opening on the top. And I was standing in the opening looking for cute boys. And all of a sudden there were all these queens burning trash cans and police and a riot. And I didn't know what it was, so.
I mean, it's, so long ago and then not so long ago, all at the same time. Yeah. Other thoughts, anybody else to share? I mean, so yeah, my concern was it's just such a beautiful Devar Torah. There's no real controversy to stir up. I just really feel she expresses what I've been trying to get at. This is what she's expressing here, and she's framing in Pride, which to me is an interesting framing, is exactly where I feel like the vision of the shul is, which is just totally loving the diversity of the Jewish community and promoting it. And like, that is the flowers, the budding flowers of God that, Rabbi Hochstein referred to there. Other thoughts, other ideas? All right. Well, in that case, anybody want to suggest a topic for, I have a guest 2 weeks from today. If you want to put your calendar in your calendar, 2 weeks for today, Madison Margolin, who is a writer, a journalist for Vice and Playboy. And she started a psychedelic magazine called Double Blind. And she put together the first ever Jewish psychedelic retreat a couple months ago. She's going to be joining me 2 weeks from today to talk about Jews and psychedelics. But I'm looking for other topics as well. Don, yeah. Sorry, Don, you wanted to say something.
I just want to say my takeaway from this is as I'm listening to this, and it is so beautiful, the safety of this space. And as I was listening to these beautiful shares from people, that, this thing about cognitive biases, to keep reminding myself, and I know this, of my own. And they may not be as overt or hateful as a lot that we see out there, but they're there. And the only thing I can say is that I have those, but the higher brain also works at the same time, I guess, or the light of God. And that can come in and say, hey, that's a cognitive bias.
Yeah, it's love.
And so,
you need that love. You need that love to come in to help you. I mean, I feel that too. Amen.
yeah, and just to acknowledge, though, the cognitive biases, because if I get down deep enough and I meditate a lot, they get ugly. To be honest, my cognitive biases, when I'm not in a good mood, when I'm not in touch with the love, put it that way, when I'm in touch with the darkness, when I've got the mask over my face, I can hate people real easily. I mean, I can hate the groups that we're speaking about real easily. I'm talking about the dark moments, the really dark moments, and last for a second because I can get out of it. But once again, I just think we have to keep acknowledging that. And this is a great group, but it's also a select group, a very beautiful, open-hearted people. The question I would have is, how does this group expand to those who have the cognitive biases, are determined to keep them, and can't see anything else? That's to expand it. Yeah.
I mean, that is ultimately, for those of you, who knew Rabbi Lou, who've participated in the high holiday season, who've gone from, Elul to Rosh Hashanah, who've done Teshuvah. I mean, Teshuvah is all about coming to terms with our cognitive biases and just coming clean about it. And that is hard work. And that's why we have to do it every year, because it's really hard work. And I think you put your finger on something very important, Don. If we don't do that work, we project it outward. We place it on other people. We place the evils and the hate that we can't see in ourselves, and we project it right on, often to those people who don't look like us and who we're afraid of. Yeah, Ellen.
I just think one of the privileges of being part of this group is that it encourages me, it gives me courage that when I'm around the kind of biases you're talking about, Don, the kind of things that we're talking about, it gives me the strength to come out and face it that I wouldn't have if I felt like I didn't have this support.
Well, I'm blessed. I feel blessed to be able to partake in it and to have this community here, even if it's a select community. Hopefully it's one that can grow and can continue to support many more people. So thank you, Kol HaKavod, for a really beautiful conversation. And I will see you all next week. Send me more topics that you would like to discuss. But I thought this was great for this week. All right, take care, everybody.